I mean, we'll talk about it later too. But if Ohio State had everybody, what would the final score have been? But
48-31.
You think that's it? Like Ohio State scores. They score one more time, and then Bama only gets a field goal less.
I really don't see anything stopping Alabama from doing what they did last night to their full set.
I mean, offensively, they had their, they had the squad and all that. But defensively, I don't think they would have been able to handle a lot more, especially if Fields was fully healthy and if Trey Sermon didn't get out. But oh well.
I don't know. If you can get Devonte Smith lined up on a linebacker, it don't really matter if you've got good pass rush or not.
Yeah, that's true. He was getting left open like all game, man. That was wild. Anyway, yeah, we can kick this thing off if you want.
Yeah, let's hit it.
All right. Well. It is the end of the 2020, 2021, really just 2020. I just go by the year it starts. College football season. The final door has been closed after the national championship Monday night between Alabama and Ohio State. It was by far the most interesting season, I think, that has ever been played. Besides 2007, that's a different level. That'll forever remain a different level. But with restrictions and all sorts of new rules and limited schedules and everything like that, it was a very weird season. Of course, for Bama fans, it ended exactly how they wanted to. And all in all, I think this is a season that we'll look back on with a lot of good memories in terms of college football. We'll remember 2020 as being that terrible year that we finally, like the world just kind of collapsed in on itself for a solid year. And still, though, I think this college football season, we're going to look back and be like, oh man, you remember everything that was going on? You remember all this happening and all that? And it's going to be like, you know what? That was a pretty solid year for college football. Had a lot of breakout stars, had a lot of pretty interesting matchups that played out. Really interesting kind of Heisman race at one point in the season. Everything except really the playoffs were pretty great this year. But we'll start it back from the beginning. We had a preview of our bowl games for bowl season. Kind of just talk a little about the ones that stood out to us, and then what we expected to happen in the playoffs. We were both wrong, but that's still fine. I'm gonna kick it over to you, Steve, real quick, and get you, and so we can get going on these bowl games, man. Out of everything that happened in this bowl season, what game really do you think a team showed the most, or a team just completely did not deserve where they were?
Let me pull up stats before I start babbling. There's three games that I have in mind. I guess we'll go back and forth so I don't lay all my cards out on the table. But I think Ball State really impressed me with their postseason play. I have to shout out to Mac before anyone else because they're the most important. But just Ball State taking care of San Jose State, who, had a great year in terms of their program history. But Ball State just came out in the first quarter, put up 27 on them. San Jose State did not get the score until the third quarter. Ball State didn't really have anything too impressive in terms of stats. Plitt was 12 of 19 for 217 yards of TD. Not much, 22 carries and 89 yards on the ground. But interception return, just good, solid, fundamental football. Ball State was up 34-0 at one point. So the champions of the MAC come out on top. If they want to claim the title, I will not stand in their way. Chirp, 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 as they would say. But yeah, Ball State, just a good story. Started off slow with Miami, Ohio lost, then just picked it up and went with it for the rest of the season. I'm so sorry to the Buffalo Bulls, who just get to the title game in the MAC. They look like outstanding every year during the regular season, and then something happens to where they always come up short in the title game. Next year, Buffalo, you got to do this, man.
Exactly.
You've had too much talent in that field be wasted in the title game.
Yes.
So, Mac, first and foremost, Ball State, you looked great. Your uniforms are awesome. Your helmets are better than they've ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I have to say for right now. What do you got, Caleb?
I'm gonna say that Ole Miss took a dub over Indiana. That was the one game I expected Indiana to prove that they were, next to Ohio State, the best Big Ten team, and they rightfully still are, I would say. But to go up against a 4-5 Ole Miss team, and it didn't really look terrible, but against a 4-5 Ole Miss team that really had no identity defensively for a majority of the season, pretty much all season. They ranked near the bottom. And sure, Indiana did not have the firepower that they had when they were hanging 40 up on Ohio State. But to be held to 20 points in regulation against Ole Miss, and even though Indiana had a really solid pass defense this season, Ole Miss was just barely able to slide by with 26 points and just secure that win. They really didn't have Ole Miss had 346 passing yards, which is just absurd to hang on Indiana. Matt Corral dominated, had 2 touchdowns at 342 yards. Rushing was not really anything at all. And for Indiana, they played a balanced offense, but they did not have the yardage to match the points that Ole Miss put up. It was literally just 6 more points. And Indiana had a 14-point fourth quarter to really bring it within closing distance. But Tuttle was a little inaccurate all night, had a pick. The rush game was kind of stalled besides Scott, and they really didn't have the offensive cohesiveness they needed. Ole Miss pulling out a 6-point win over a 6-1 Indiana team whose only loss was barely to Ole Miss at the beginning of the season. That's big time. That's big time for Ole Miss. I think that's definitely going to help them out gaining momentum going into next year with Lane Kiffin.
I don't know how this game looks. I guess you don't know how the season looks. Michael Penix Jr. Stays healthy.
Yeah.
But Ole Miss didn't necessarily play up to their standard offensively. Yeah, they had a lot of yardage, but they didn't really capitalize in some red zone situations, kicking field goals, missing extra points. The Ole Miss's defense essentially locked the game away, and you have not heard that being said since they were paying players out in the open.
Yeah.
So, this is a good stepping stone for the Lane Kiffin program. He has got to get a new defensive coordinator. DJ Durkin is not the choice. He's a bad person overall. Yeah. But you got to get, you got to get somebody in there to clog some holes. It can be a bend, don't break defense, but Ole Miss's defense has been broke for a very long time now. So
quite a few years.
We need to get in the weight room. We need to get a good defensive coordinator that knows how to stop the run and the pass, like every other good defensive coordinator is. So you got to be able to match that offensive firepower, or else you're just wasting it.
Yeah, very true.
My next subject at hand is the Oklahoma Sooners beating the tail off the Florida Gators.
My word!
This game started off bad.
It was terrible. It was absolutely horrible.
Man, you're benching Kyle Trask, a Heisman finalist, in the first quarter.
What do you have, 3 picks in the first half?
It was,
One was a pick 6.
Emory Jones is in there, and you think it would be a blowout game if Emory Jones is in the game, but no. Van Mullen and his self-proclaimed third stringers, which way to just put your team in the dirt while you're losing, mister.
Yeah, exactly. That comment he made post-game, I was like, that's got to be degrading to hear it as a player.
Dan Mullen does not need to speak to the media after every Florida Gator loss. That will save them so much face, because every time he talks to the media, he just puts his foot in his mouth like he always does.
Yeah, that was bad.
Let Ty Grantham talk to the media. That'd be more fun, because he's just mad and angry that he can't stop anybody. even though his whole playbook is pretty much out in the world to see.
I mean, yeah, and those interviews probably get annoying because it would only just be people talking about how he can't stop any offense that they go up against.
Yeah, Oklahoma, they took care of business. They did it in a hurry. It was hilarious to see just a 17-point shift within the first 7 minutes of the game. Oklahoma said, "We're here. We're done playing around." Dan Mullen can talk all he wants to talk about. That's your third straight loss for the end of the season. I don't care if you were missing 3 wide receivers. Good teams can win with what they got on the field. If you're talking all talk about this, you've had some of the best recruiting classes you've had as a Florida Gator in a long time. It doesn't really matter. Alabama can play with depth. Y'all got to be able to play with depth too.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter when and where. So Lincoln Riley finally gets a win on New Year's Day. It's been a very long time since he keeps getting trampled in the playoffs. So
it was a Baker, Kyler, then Jalen 3 straight years of just getting bombed in the playoffs.
I mean, Baker didn't get bombed. Everybody else did.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
But, yeah, Oklahoma finally gets back in the win column on New Year's. Spencer Rattler looking good. They lose Charleston Rambo to the Miami Hurricanes. But he's got a good receiving target in Marvin Mims now. So I think Oklahoma's going to still be at the top of the pack as Texas tries to rebuild under Sark and his new regime, as well as just giving Gundy a little bit of hope every year and then smashing it every time Bedlam comes around.
Big 12 is definitely going to be interesting this year because Oklahoma State coming off an 8-3 season, they looked all right. They may be able to pull something together for this next season to really kind of contend here and there. Oklahoma with Spencer Rattler coming back, even though Charleston Rambo with the transfer to Miami, that was wild. I'm going to be honest. I did not see that happening at all. Like, that was just, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what it was exactly for, but I think Miami could be dangerous next year with Derek King back and having Charleston Rambo now. Miami might actually be a threat in the ACC. I mean, this past year, they had two losses this year, and I mean, sure, both of them were, pretty devastating, to say the least. Miami really could pull something together next year. I could see them finishing again with 2 losses or 1 loss. It only being to Clemson, or if North Carolina can pull it together after their kind of collapse. But Miami kind of slowly built something thanks to Charleston Rambo. But with Spencer Rattler coming back, I do think Oklahoma is probably going to run the table in the Big 12. I think Texas is going to have another 8-4 season, but the hopes are going to be high, and I think they probably will manage their expectations with Sark. I think they understand that while he was at Washington, he was a little above average. USC, he was pretty good, but his personal issues got in the way of that. And then, leading one of the greatest offenses the SEC has ever seen this past year, it's he's had some time to recalibrate and get things adjusted to fill in a head coaching spot. He's got the experience, and now he's spent 2 or 3 seasons in total with Nick Saban on championship teams. I think Sark's a good fit for Texas. I think he's going to bring a lot of a different mentality to that to maybe bring Texas back. And I'd give it 3 full seasons. After the 3rd season, really evaluate. I could see them keeping Sark for another, 4 or 5. But if he doesn't have a Big 10, Big 12 title by the end of that 3rd season, there's going to be a lot of, I would say, undeserving pressure to be put on Sark for that. Herb Street said it best, talking about Texas just managing their expectations. Don't expect a title run within 2 years of a head coach. Give him time to build and everything. And I don't know, man. So that'll be an interesting. Big 12 will definitely be a little interesting next season. And you never know. Gary Patterson might whip TCU back into shape, bring him back to the 2012 days, the 2014 days.
I don't know. Iowa State, with Matt Campbell staying, they could actually become a legitimate Big 12 powerhouse to usurp somebody like TCU or Oklahoma State. So
yeah, in each conference, you need at least 4 really good teams in each conference. You need 4 teams that, if they get things right this year, they can go to the top. And in the Big 10, ACC, and SEC, it's really just Clemson, Bama, Ohio State, who are like the 3. They're there's a more chance they will get there than they won't get there at the end of the season, like the SEC or the conference championship. But you got Florida, you got A&M, LSU, Auburn every now and then, Georgia, and then the ACC. ACC really only has Clemson and I don't know, maybe North Carolina now. Big Ten, sometimes you got Washington. You may have Iowa, or not Washington, Wisconsin. Michigan's a hit or miss. Penn State's was a miss this past year. Big 12 though, they've got the ultimate conference for that, where there's like 4 teams that you sure Oklahoma's the top dog, but they've got like 4 teams that they could really do something with at any given point if they just hit everything right on target. They can do it. I don't know. Big 12 is going to be interesting next season. I can definitely for sure see that being a big storyline for next year. My last really bowl game here is, and then you can give yours after this. Obviously. I was really shocked at Northwestern hanging 35 on Auburn. I think that may have been the bowl game that I was not expecting to end that way. I was expecting it to come down to the wire, last second field goal type, and I was expecting Auburn to pull it out because I didn't think Northwestern would have any sort of offense the whole game. It would just be Northwestern not moving the ball and Auburn getting stopped like all game long. So I expected it to be like 21-17 or 24-20 or something like that. But Northwestern dropped a cool 14 in the first quarter alone, and then 21 in the second half, including 14 in the fourth, which was huge. But Auburn had no offense the entire game. 6 in the second quarter, 7 in the third quarter, 6 in the fourth quarter. That will not get you a win in any game ever, especially today. I was really surprised by Northwestern and what they were able to do defensively to keep just Auburn really in check from getting on the board. I mean, Auburn had 361 total yards, only 61 on the ground. So Northwestern showed up. I mean, Northwestern had 457 yards of offense. Pretty solid game. Ramsey, 24 of 35, 291, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, he threw for the same amount of yards as Bo Nix, and Bo Nix had 7 more attempts than he did. And Ramsey had 2 more touchdowns. So, I mean, Northwestern just looked efficient. They looked pretty consistent all game long, and defense showed up big time. So, Northwestern over Auburn, man, that was a big one for me, honestly. I was not expecting that.
I mean, you've kind of fired your coach and Gus. You've got Kevin Steele just playing as the substitute. I think Auburn was pretty much done with the season anyways. So, yeah, you want to have something to build on for the next year. But, I mean, most people usually overrate bowl games in terms of how the team will perform in the next year anyways. So, I don't know. Brian Harsin, he's got to be able to develop Bo Nix. I'm sure Bo Nix is coming back. I don't think he would be drafted if he declared now.
No.
You've got to be able to get him comfortable as a passer. You've got to be able to recruit some. I mean, he's had some good receivers, and they are all declaring. Stove, Seth Williams. I want to say one more. But like all of these guys who are talented, but could just never get the ball to them either if the offensive line was breaking down or Bo Nix is deciding to scramble and run rather than waiting and looking for targets. It's just Auburn loves to waste talent, and you've got a good. I mean, I think Bo Nix is whenever you get somebody to him that can utilize him effectively. I feel like Gus Malzahn was always about the kind of dual threat quarterback, the guy, but I feel like he always wanted to put emphasis on the run, the option side of the run pass option. So Brian Harsin's going to bring in a new scheme. He's done well with quarterbacks up in Boise. He's bringing in Derek Mason as defensive coordinator, that's where he's excelled at. That's where he was when he took the job for the Vanderbilt when he was up at Stanford on those just really solid like linebacking and defensive front type Stanford teams. So I don't remember who Brian Hart hired as an offensive coordinator, has hired someone, but he's got to find somebody who's going to be able to use Bo Nix and develop talent there. Yeah. Same reason Sark's going to Texas, they have to be able to develop talent.
Yeah, I agree.
My final bowl season observation, which hurts me the most, is Cincinnati not burning clock
Oh,
at
gosh.
the end of a game in which you were up 2 points. You had not scored since your opening drive of the third quarter. Georgia's been clawing its way back into the game, and you have the ball 30, and you decide to just throw the ball on third down.
Yeah.
You don't waste play clock. You give Georgia the ball back with 90 seconds. They go down the field. They get this dude who's decided he just wants to be the best kicker since the dude with the glasses, where's his name?
Rodrigo Blankenship?
Yes, I don't know why I couldn't remember his name. He wants to be the next Rodrigo, boots a 53-yarder with 3 seconds left. It's the most infuriating game of the day because Cincinnati could have won just based on burning clock. Georgia didn't have any timeouts. They could not stop the clock. Could have wasted play clock. I don't know what Luke Fickell was doing. I don't know what their offensive coordinator was doing, but they essentially sealed their own coffin with that last possession that they had before JT Daniels, who had a kind of rocky day, just throwing the ball, decided to have his 2-minute drill come to life. I wanted 3 teams to be able to claim a national championship after this season, and none of them can because they all freaking lost.
Oh, man. We really could have had 3 teams been able to claim a national title. Cincy would have been the most legit of them, though. I mean, that Cincinnati team could have actually done some damage.
This game made me literally walk outside because I was so frustrated with the play calling. It was so bad. I mean, yes, Cincinnati does return 15, including Desmond Ridder. You lose your defensive coordinator, who's the backbone of your team. He's going to Notre Dame. You got to work on your offense. You got to be able to bring back a defensive mind. I know Luke Fickell was a defensive coordinator at Ohio State. I don't think he wants to helm that position alone, though. So Cincinnati can still be an American powerhouse, but I don't know.
It's a very, very oof. The ending to bowl season and everything has been nothing short of 2020. I mean, with that Cincinnati not running the clock out and teams winning or teams having bowl self-imposed bowl bans, and then saw the matchups. It was like, what in the world is happening? However, I think nothing was more shocking than excuse me. Ohio State's dismantling of Clemson in the first round of the playoffs. I was not expecting Ohio State to win. I was expecting Clemson to win, obviously, but I was expecting Clemson to win by a touchdown. I figured Ohio State would give them everything that they could handle, and I really thought that it would come down to Trevor Lawrence leading a game-winning drive or something like that, and storybooking it, cementing his legacy and all that. And then 14-14 at the end of the first, and then here comes Ohio State with a 21-point second quarter. I mean, to put them up 35-14. Like, that is ridiculous. And then both teams traded touchdowns in the second half, 49-28. I was not expecting that in the slightest bit. I was not expecting Justin Fields to go off like he did, dropping 6 touchdowns. I was not expecting Trey Sermon to go off like he did. I mean, there was no run game for Clemson. They had 44 rushing yards to 254 from Ohio State. I mean, they looked like the unbeatable team. Ohio State did. I mean, from the playoffs, I don't think the Bama Notre Dame game was a big surprise. But for Ohio State to hang 49 and only give up 28 to Clemson, that was ridiculous. That had me feeling like, okay, maybe we actually did get the natty that we needed. But Ohio State over Clemson, that was a huge shock to me. I'm still surprised. I'm still surprised that was the overall outcome of that first round of the playoffs. I mean, did anything from the playoffs at all stand out to you like that?
I think I'm appreciative of Notre Dame, I guess, covering the spread. Many thought that was going to be the blowout of the day.
Yeah.
But I think Notre Dame just wanted to keep it slow and steady, a low burning, like a crock pot game. I think Alabama didn't really care about putting too much on them anyways. I think they were saving all their points for the national championship. I feel like Tony Elliott's presence should not be overlooked with the Clemson game. He's Clemson's offensive coordinator. He was out of that game due to COVID. I feel like their first two possessions were good because he probably was the one who scripted them out, and after that, they were kind of on their own. Ohio State knew how to beat Brent Venables. They ran a tempo, but not like a necessarily fast tempo, just enough to where his front seven couldn't really get set, and then Ohio State would just run a quick running play with Trey Sermon. Ohio State also has one of the best front five in the nation, and they were able to use that to their advantage with Trey Sermon just knocking off big run after big run. Justin Fields taking a crack at the ribs, and he still is able to put up 6 touchdowns. I feel like Clemson got too complacent in the second quarter, and every time they punted, Ohio State scored a touchdown on the next possession, and that's how you get deep in a hole. It's hard to claw your way back out of it.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that second quarter, the momentum swing in the game, Ohio State didn't take their foot off the gas, and Trevor Lawrence is one of the best quarterbacks that's ever played in college football, and yet he's going to be overshadowed by a lot of people many would consider under him talent-wise.
Yeah, I think that may be something, too, that I don't think Trevor Lawrence, that'll affect him at all, really. But for some reason, I know when people look back on it, they probably may not give Trevor the credit he's due, even though he did have that season in 2018. Last year kind of got manhandled by LSU. Not kind of. They got manhandled by LSU. And then this year, taking a devastating beating to Ohio State. I mean, that was just brutal. But other than that, we moved into from after the playoffs into the Heisman ceremony, and I would say I'm a little surprised. I did honestly expect the committee to still go with the quarterback, but for Devonte Smith to win the Heisman, first Heisman for a receiver in what is it, 30 years? Since 91?
Yeah, since Desmond.
Yeah, since Desmond in 91. He finished the season with like 1850 in yards, receiving yards, and 23 receiving touchdowns, including the Natty, which is it's pretty good stats for a 13-game season. I mean, if he had gotten the full 15 games of a non-shortened season, I mean, he may have put up 2,100, and possibly like 26, 27 touchdowns, which would have been absolutely ridiculous. But Mac Jones had a great season, and Devonte Smith is just honestly the one takeaway that I've gotten from him is that it's like he doesn't look like he's moving fast, but next thing you know, there's like 10 yards of separation between him and a defender. And I think that's maybe just the one thing that Devonte Smith does best is just get open. Because I don't think anybody can cover him no matter what the coverage is called, no matter what it is. It's like you can't really stop Devonte Smith from just getting open. And I think he rightfully deserved the Heisman. I think this was the year to give it to a receiver for putting up numbers like he did and dominating in relatively every single game. And that included, 5 games with Jalen Waddle. But Devonte Smith was just on a different level this year, man.
This was like the one thing about 2020 that I can agree on, and that is he was the best player in college football.
Yeah.
I don't know if Waddle's absence made him more of a target than it would have been if Waddle stayed as a secondary threat. I mean, Devonte was clearly Mac Jones' favorite target. It's the one he was always looking for. It's probably because Devonte was always getting open. That's thanks to Sark's scheme. But, having 3 Alabama players in the top 10, that's something you don't think of lightly with Najee Mack and Devonte Smith.
Yeah.
That's a clear. I'm good with it. I hate that he didn't get the full Heisman experience due to COVID, not being able to go to New York and stand beside those who have came before him. But I don't know. His mask is baller. I wish I could have a Heisman face mask like he did.
Yeah. Man, that would be nice. Maybe one of these days when one of us wins the Heisman, we'll be able to get one.
I don't know if I still have eligibility.
Actually, yeah. That's a good point. So post Heisman, we've had the past 2 Heisman winners playing the Natty. Had a little streak, I think a 3-year streak where they did it. Lamar, I think it was Lamar Baker and then Kyler. They didn't make it to the Natty. But this year we've got Devonte Smith at Alabama going up against Ohio State. And the Natty really from the first quarter, I mean, it looked like Ohio State had no trouble. They really looked like they had zero trouble moving the ball. They had zero trouble, making plays when they needed to. And it looked like they were going to keep up with Alabama for the rest of the game. I mean, sure, there's going to be a couple of drives here and there that you can't maximize on and capitalize, and it'll go both ways. But in the end, it looks like this is going to be neck and neck. And Bama's biggest question was their defense heading into the game. Ohio State's was their defense heading into the game. And who would have the better offense to overcome the other's defense, and who would expose more, and who would take advantage of the defensive liabilities on both teams. And while Ohio State did for that first quarter, even tying it up at 14, or bringing it within 1 at 14, it's 14-21 at one point. And then after they scored that 14, they only had 10 more points for the rest of the game, whereas when Bama had 21, they ended up having, 1, 2, 3, 4, had 4 more touchdowns and then a field goal. So they had 31 more points on top of their 21. And the second half adjustments were needed, obviously, for both teams, but Bama just took way more advantage of it, I think. And like we were saying earlier, I was not expecting that. I wasn't expecting a lot of things this season, but for the fact that Bama actually played up to what the media hype had been saying they would do, that was what shocked me. Because I could see, Bama with all the rat poison and all that stuff coming in at times, trying to, affect them and everything. It's like, sure, you guys think they're the number 1 team, but it's because they're dropping 50 points a game. Their defense is giving up 20, though. Just wait until they come across a defense that's top 5 against an offense that's top 10. And, Bama's going to crumble. And, I mean, look at Florida. Florida didn't have that good. And Florida had a terrible defense. And Florida still hung within 6 the whole game. Like, there was not a time where Bama was comfortable in that game. And so that was like, yeah, see, that's all you need. All you need to do is apply pressure, and their defense won't be able to keep up. But Notre Dame didn't do it, and Ohio State didn't do it. And for Bama to pull away with their 18th total, is it 18th? Yeah, 18th title, giving Nick Saban his 7th overall, 6th at Bama. It's a weird feeling, I would say. And because, people are going to put an asterisk next to this one and say whatever they have to say about it. But in the end, it did feel like with this game, Bama was the best team of everyone. And I don't know if you would agree with that, but when I look at it, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, they didn't have the defense to really stand up against everyone, but they had a defense that was good enough to make sure that they never got out of a game at any given point. And their offense was the same that way. But after looking at it, I do think this Bama team is the best in the country, no question.
What I'm seeing with this game, it's 2 of the best offensive line units in the country. Ohio State's defense played a lot of cover 3. That didn't help. They went to man. That didn't help. I think sometimes this is the era of a good offense beating a good defense, regardless of what that defense can do.
Yeah.
Alabama was able to get the looks they wanted based on pre-snap motion. They've got Devonte Smith all over the field to where Sean Wade and others are out of place. They're cramming them with a bunch of interior receivers and tight ends, just kind of blocking these guys on the outside, just allowing other people to run free. It was a clear domination. After Ohio State kicked that field goal, they were going to be running from behind for the rest of the game. They capitalized on a very rare Alabama turnover with the Mac Jones fumble, but I don't know. This Alabama team, I think they could do this to anybody, regardless of who they were facing in the championship game. I don't care if the A&M fans were mad. They probably would have got beat worse this time, regardless of how their trajectory into this game was and how they had confidence and momentum. They lost by 28 earlier in the season. They'll probably lose by 35 or 40 maybe in this game. I don't think it matters who Alabama faced. It's just names and numbers to them. They play their kind of ball. They win their kind of games. It's funny to see the progression of this Nick Saban tenure at Alabama. It used to be all about just a stout defense. We'll score 21, they'll score 3, it don't matter, to eventually transitioning into, yes, defense is important, but now we're going to focus on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, he complains about new innovations in the game. I knew he was one of the biggest proponents of keeping the RPO out of the game while silently adapting to it and incorporating it into his own scheme of things. I think that helped with the likes of Lane Kiffin, Stark, and Loxley, and all of these rotating offensive coordinators. Yes, I'm sure Nick Saban would rather this game be 52-0 than 52-24. But it's just the game we play. Offense is still being superior to defense. I'm sure the penalties that are always appropriate to the defense is still hamstringing them in a way. I wish there was offensive penalties that created an automatic fourth down to combat all these competitive penalties on the defensive side of the ball that create an automatic first down. But in terms of the games we play, this is probably the best Alabama team ever. That 2017 class was ridiculous. And, of course, Nick Saban just wants to go out and recruit anyway, so he's going to go get even better talent that's going to come into the play. I'd like to see this offense go up against last year's LSU offense, even though they kind of did have a similar thing with Tua, and they had Rupp, Judy, and all of those cats. But I don't know. It's an interesting thought. It's the best Alabama team that I've ever watched. And I hate that they were so fun to watch, and there was nobody on that team that I'm just like, man, I don't like that guy. Alabama's becoming too likable. That's a problem.
That's a major problem. You need a villain. We all need a villain in the college football world, and it was Ohio State for a little bit. Everyone still hates Ohio State. But then it was Texas. And it was Bama for a while, and then Ohio State for a little bit, and then I think now the villain, even though the villain isn't someone who wins a lot, I think the villain now is Texas. It might be Clemson, maybe. But yeah, I feel like people have eased up a lot on hating on Bama. Just because, Bama's not doing anything that's disrespectful towards other teams and things like that, or calling people out and things. But I think this could be the best Bama team that Saban's ever had. Offensively, yes. They set records. And they had 3 guys that finished, consensus All-Americans, and 3 of them were in the Heisman Trophy finalists. Technically only 2 of them, but 3 got votes. And they just set records across the board in an SEC schedule, and then took it to Notre Dame and Ohio State. I think they would be probably top 2. You could argue them as the greatest Saban Bama team, but I still think the 2016 team that never won a championship is still the best Bama team. And the only reason they lost is because they played Deshaun Watson. It's Deshaun Watson. What are you going to do? You can't do anything about that. But this team right here was something special. It was pretty crazy to see them, and it was like all season long you could tell that they were just focused on wanting to do what they wanted to do, which was go out and win. So yeah, congrats to Bama on your title. I think this season put Nick Saban as the greatest college coach of all time. I'm going to say that he is the GOAT. Would you have him in that conversation, Wooten?
He's the only head coach, living or dead, who has 7 national titles.
That is true.
And he broke Bear Bryant's record at Alabama. He was able to win at 2 different schools in 2 different time periods. So I don't really know who else you can even put up there with him. Alabama's had 7 or 6 national titles in the past 12 seasons, and then I think the rest of college football, I don't know how many titles are distributed amongst those head coaches.
I think out of the past 12, 6 go to Bama, 6 go to LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, Florida State, and Auburn. Clemson with 2 of them.
So, I mean, he is the epitome of success, continued success, regardless of who's on his staff and who he has playing on the field.
Yeah. I think his 6th title run that he has right now is more impressive than what Bear did. Because Bear did it over the span of 25 years. And 6 is still ridiculous. That's incredibly impressive. Most of the legendary coaches of all time in college, have anywhere between 2 to 4 titles under their belt. And, that was because they were at a school for, 20 to 30 years. Look at Tom Osborne. Tom Osborne has like the greatest win percentage in the history of college football. He won 3 titles in his 1990s Nebraska dynasty. And I remember going through looking at his head coaching record, and I think there was 3 other seasons where the game that they lost was the national title game. And then there was like another season where they finished 3rd in the poll with 1 loss. So it wasn't like, Tom Osborne was, every often they would have a great team. It was like this dude won 9 games every single year. He never had more than 3 losses and less than 9 wins in a season, which is ridiculous. And he had like 4 other instances where he was literally a game away from a national title, win. So, even he could have had that many, but for somebody like Saban to take a Bama team in 2007 and then by 2021 have 6 titles with him, in his 14 years, he's won a title more than I worded that wrong. He's since 2009, that was it, since 2009. So, 12 years, he has won a title as many times as he has not won a title at Alabama. He's 6-6 in terms of winning a title versus not in his years at Bama. And I think in the time frame he's done it in and how he was able to do it so quickly and do it so consistently, I think, yeah, he's the GOAT. They've never had more than 2 seasons in between a title win. They had 2010, they didn't. 11 and 12, they did. 13 and 14, they didn't. And 15, they did. 16 didn't. 17 did. 18, 19, they didn't. And then past year, they did. So Saban, I think he's officially carved his name as the GOAT. I don't think there's anybody else that can ever achieve what he's done until like he retires, and maybe Ryan Day does something. Maybe Dabo hits a new stride with Clemson. You never know. But I don't know. It seems like Nick Saban's the GOAT. It just feels right to say that, I think, at this point. But
which I don't even know how you can really, like, if Tom Osborne's teams were placed in the BCS and the AP era rather than like trying to gain votes from voters. Like, some teams got national titles and they did not deserve the claim just because of how voting went.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can compare coaches' track records. I think like Tom Osborne is probably the strongest regular season head coach in history. But I don't know, you can't look past. Everybody talks about titles. Nick Saban's got plenty of titles. He's got plenty of conference titles. I don't even know why he wants to coach. I know he's going to still coach. He's going to coach until he's dead. But I don't think he has anything to prove. And I would hate whoever has to. Nobody's going to fill his shoes. So whoever Alabama hates the least to take his spot, he's going to have such a fun time.
It's going to be a nightmare. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So aside from our season wrap-up, as we are heading into 2021 with a full head of steam and getting ready for this next season, the offseason's coming up. We did discuss if the FCS does kick off their spring football schedule that they said that they might possibly do. We'll definitely cover that because FCS is always fun to watch. We'll definitely have to cover that. And I think up until possibly once fall training hits, fall camp hits, and we're probably about 2 weeks out from the season, we'll be back in full swing with FBS. We'll be back momentarily here and there to talk some things like recruiting, all that, National Signing Day, other big coaching news, things like that. We'll come back here probably about every other week, maybe even every 3 weeks, or depending on what other sports and news is happening, we'll come back. But 2021 Division I college football season, Wooten, what is your biggest prediction for this next season?
Oh, man. I haven't thought about next season.
On the spot.
On the spot. What's something hot? What's a hot take? I think Ole Miss is second in the West. That's a hot take. I don't think they're beating Alabama, but just let them have fun. Let Lane Kiffin get his system in a full year in a non-COVID environment. Let's see how that goes. He's getting Matt Corral back. I'm sure he's going to go find some talent receiving-wise with the loss of Elijah Moore to the draft, as well as Kenny Yeboah, the transfer from Temple, who did a good job as a tight end kind of role. They've got a younger Swag Kelly, his brother, Chris Kelly, I want to say is that his name, playing tight end. He had a good game against Indiana in the bowl game. So Ole Miss is exciting. If they can get their defense even like semi-tolerable, they could be the Alabama-Ole Miss game may decide the West.
Wow, I was honestly not expecting you to go there. You know what? Honestly, yeah, that's true. I did just call it out. I can see that if Lane Kiffin gets a full offseason with this squad here, they got a full season of putting it in. They got Matt Corral back, like you said. I honestly do think Ole Miss might have a team where if they play Bama early on and then lose that game, and they're 2-3-1 to start the season or something like that, and they just rip through the rest of everybody with that offense. Like, sure, they're giving up 30 points a game, but they're also dropping like 55. I mean, I could legitimately see that happening. And then, like, Lane winning Coach of the Year, they build off that momentum. They go to a New Year's Six bowl. Like, that Ole Miss team could be dangerous this next season. If they tweak a few things here or there, they could be very dangerous this next season.
I mean, look, you played LSU, like, strong, an LSU team that wasn't that great, but you still played them well even with 6 turnovers. Kellen Mond is going to the draft for Texas A&M. They don't have a quarterback yet. Arkansas, if you don't throw 6 picks against them, you win that game. Auburn's still in a mess, and they'll have a first-year coach to deal with the SEC when he's been in the Mountain West forever. Mississippi State, Mike Leach only runs 3 plays. Get those plays down, you can stop them. Who else is in the West? Alabama, you scored a lot of points on Alabama this year. You came up short. Oh, well. You can do it again. It can happen. So, yeah, Ole Miss should be able to be in the top tier of the SEC. LSU is still going to be rebuilding. They fired Pope Pelini. Ensminger is going to stay on as an analyst, but they don't have an offensive coordinator yet. So, if they do, I don't remember. So the West is in shambles outside of Alabama. You can do whatever you want right now. And I think Ole Miss is the second most we have our heads screwed on type in the West right now. Yeah. So I don't see why you can't compete at that level. Please do not get NCAA violations and show causes like Dan Mullen. Please.
Yeah, absolutely not. And here's mine. And you're going to hate this, and you're not going to like it, and you're going to think it's the dumbest thing in the world. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Michigan takes 1 loss in the regular season early on. They win out. They go to the Big Ten Championship. They win. And then they go to the playoffs. But they lose in the first round, and thus starts the revamped Harbaugh era.
But where did you get this heat from?
Is that too stupid?
Oh my goodness! I mean, yeah, they didn't lose to Ohio State this year because they didn't play them, but remember, they still have to do that. And let me look at. Do they have their schedules like up and ready to go for next year?
I
gotta
don't believe so.
Playing. They make these things like 8 years in advance. They should have their freaking schedules out. 2021 schedule. Let's see. Yes, they have it ready to go. They just don't have the time set. They have to play the Washington Huskies. That could be something.
Yeah.
I mean, unless Western Michigan, who are they losing to Washington? Is that who you're saying they're going to lose to? Because that's early.
Yeah, that might happen. I'm not gonna lie, that might happen.
I mean, it's the only team of the three teams that they play before Rutgers that they could lose to, and still, if they turn out to be like the Pac-12 North champions again,
yeah,
but not going to the freaking title game. That's the only team between Western Michigan and NIU that they could lose to and still make a playoff. I mean, you've got to go to Indiana and to Wisconsin. Indiana is not necessarily a pushover game anymore.
Yeah, thank you.
Wisconsin is going to return a lot of starters. I don't know what Nebraska is anymore. Northwestern's going to have a good defense like always. I mean, I don't know. With their defensive coordinator retiring, who knows how Northwestern is going to be. I'm sure they will keep his philosophies in-house.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you've got to go 5 straight weeks after the bye after Michigan State, which is never, I mean, with Harbaugh isn't a sure thing. And then you have to go Nebraska, Northwestern, at Penn State, and then Maryland, and then Ohio State at home. It's, I don't know. I think that Michigan could win all of the games before Ohio State and then lose to Ohio State, maybe make a championship if Ohio State loses something somewhere. But I don't know, dude. That's a tall ask of people who have seen Harbaugh just diminish over time.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to coach better now that he doesn't have the fire Harbaugh stuff on top of him?
No, he's definitely going to be coaching with more. Well, my mind just blanked. Urgency. Because he's still got a lot of things to correct, obviously, and get his team in shape for. But I think because he got this extension, I think this is his last chance. They gave him the extension, but he knows that he could be let go at any moment for for how he has led Michigan. So I think he's just going to be a little bit more urgent and do a lot more things. I think he's finally going to be able to get things on track as he intended them to. And I think this year they're going to have a great year. They're just going to flip entirely from last year and just have a really good season this year. But then after that, I think it's going to return to typical Michigan. But I think this one year they're going to have a season where they're like, see, we told y'all, and then it's going to crash.
I think with releasing Don Brown, and I don't know if they found a defensive coordinator yet, but if they can find a defensive coordinator who's able to adjust at halftime, because Don Brown always ran the same scheme.
Yeah.
Regardless of the score, regardless of anything, they did right by doing that.
Yeah.
But they have to get their offense. I don't know what kind of offense they got to run, but they got to run an offense that has life in it. I haven't really seen Michigan be explosive. I don't know if that's a big, like Ohio State is the only Big Ten team that I can think of that has been explosive outside of the Trace McSorley Penn State era.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's always had their identity. We're going to run the ball down your throat until you stop us, and then we're going to keep running. Indiana can throw the ball, but it's kind of, we're going to throw 3 short passes that may not be caught, and then we'll throw a long bomb to Freifogel, and he'll catch it somehow.
Yeah.
Type of deal. It's an unsustainable passing game. Michigan's got to get the passing game going, and that'll open up the run game. Hey, Najee Harris was supposed to go to Michigan. Let's remind ourselves of that. They have to keep their commits in-house. They've got to be able to recruit better, especially at the quarterback position. They've had some duds. If Wilson Speight is the most successful quarterback of the Michigan era with Harbaugh, that's saying something.
Yeah, it's not saying something good either.
So, I don't know. I think this extension also makes it cheaper for Harbaugh to get let go because his buyout is probably reduced now.
Yeah.
And it could just be with COVID, everything, that there wasn't really a good coaching candidate on the market to replace Harbaugh at Michigan. So this could have just been we're going to extend him. It's going to kind of be like what Texas and Del Conte said in December, saying that Tom Herman will be our coach in January and then letting him go on January 2nd. So it could be one season and then he's out, regardless of the outcomes, regardless of anything.
Yeah. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, Yeah, I think what you said, we just not a lot of coaching availability, and with COVID and everything this season, I think it just made sense to be like, okay, this season was not what we wanted. We had a bad season. Let's just try and redo this. Let's just get back on track next season. And they might, they probably won't, but I'm having a big feeling that they will. But you never know. I think Michigan still has a long way to go to get to the top, and I don't know if they're going to reach it with Harbaugh at any point. But for them, I think the season will be big for him. Harbaugh he's got a lot on his mind. He's got a lot to do. So hopefully they can whip in shape and actually give Ohio State some actual competition. But with that, man, I think that'll wrap everything up for us. Had a lot of fun with this season. Had a lot of fun covering things and talking about games and having discussion. Kind of sad that it's over. I mean, it's how it is every year. You always get kind of upset after that first the week of January is over, that second week after the national championship, and you're like, man, we got eight months of nothing. But hopefully time flies, and hopefully FCS plays, and we'll cover them. But other than that, I think that'll wrap it up for us here. Thank y'all for joining us in the ENGAGE8 podcast. We will see you guys whenever the time comes, and have yourselves a good one.